Hey guys, my name's Keyan Houshmand, and in today's video we're going to be checking out the brand new Archetype GOJIRA from Neural DSP. Let's have a look. So if you guys aren't familiar with the modern metal giant that is GOJIRA, they are from France and they just collaborated with Neural DSP into bringing you guys a new Archetype plugin. This plugin suite comes with so many different effects, like an octave pedal that's MIDI controlled, phases, choruses, a different bunch of distortions. There's so many different things that you can choose in this plugin, and it's a lot of effects that GOJIRA are known for. There's a really cool feature in the plugin which I'll get into in a little bit. Just with a little bit of tinkering with the octave pedal, you can basically use it as a drop tune pedal, and that's really cool. So without further ado, let's see what it sounds like in a mix. But before we get into that, if you guys like this video at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you saw or heard. And if you want to see more of this stuff, definitely think about subscribing. If you guys want to support me, definitely check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link for that, as well as all the affiliate links in the description. How does it sound in a mix? So the guitar that I'm using right now is my Jackson Houshmand Steel Pro Series model, and this has been upgraded with bare knuckle Ragnarok pickups as well. So if you've used any other Neural DSP plugins before, the layout is very similar. You have your input here, your noise gate, your input mode, so you can switch from mono to stereo, a bunch of different presets here. I've made a couple that I'll go through in a little bit, and you've got your output as well. On the bottom left, you have MIDI control, so if you have a MIDI pedal or like a foot switch or something like that, you can assign all these values to that within the plugin. You get an inbuilt tuner, which is really nice. As you can see here, there's the 3 different types of amps and cabs, which I'll go through in a little bit, and you can set the different size of the plugin in your DAW. So now going through page by page, on the first page is the Octave page, or really what this plugin is all about, the GOJIRA page. That's what I like to think of it as anyway, because GOJIRA are very well known for using octave pedals in all their riffs. So you get 2 versions. You get one that's foot controlled, which you can assign to MIDI as well, and you just get your stock standard octave pedal as well. We might as well go through that secret little feature now that we're on this page, but using the default tone that loads up when you load up the plugin, engaging the first octave pedal, now one thing you can do that's a handy little trick that I figured out was if you put it 100% wet and kind of just play around with the foot switch until you get at the level where you want. Stock standard is about halfway, which is there, so no change to your overall tone at all. If I was to turn that off, it's the same, but if I was turning it down just a touch, pretty sure that's drop F. I can't tell straight away from my ears, but it is lower than drop A sharp, which is what I was in before. And when I turn it off, turn it on, so just by turning it to 100% wet over here and then keeping it on the fatso mode and then just playing around with the pedal, you can basically just get any tuning you want. And that's basically it. It's super easy, and it's really fun to just play around with songs if you can't be bothered detuning your guitar. All you have to do is flick this pedal on, turn it to 100% wet, engage it, and then play around with the foot switch until you're in pitch of whatever you're playing to. As opposed to this. And then within the same pedal, you also have two different blade options. So the first blade sounds like this. Or you can really slice it up and use the second blade option. It's really good for breakdowns and stuff like that. If you have some really low chugs and then add some super high blade octave in there somewhere, that will sound really cool. Moving on to the next page, you have a bunch of different stump effects you can pick before the amp. So you have an overdrive, a distortion, a phaser, and a chorus. So right now, like I said before, we're using the default tone that comes when you load up the plugin. Say I just wanted a little bit more bite out of my guitars. Maybe I'll turn the overdrive on, turn the distortion down because there's already enough distortion, maybe crank the level up a bit. As opposed to the pedal off. So when the pedal's off, you're obviously getting a little bit more low end coming in, it's a little bit more chunky, but when you turn the overdrive on, it tightens it up a little bit, which is especially good for low tunings like this in drop A sharp. One thing I did notice with this particular overdrive pedal that isn't like many other overdrive pedals that I've tried, at least in plugin format, is that the tone knob on this is very sensitive. So usually I'd have my tone knob up here, but it does get very stringy. So just for this particular overdrive pedal, I found myself using it just around halfway. And then you have your distortion pedal, which I'll get into a little bit later. You get your distortion control, volume control, and then your filter, so you can kind of set the sweep of the distortion as well. Your phaser, which is really fun to muck around with. You can adjust the rate of it, so if you want it to be really speedy and really wash it out, you can do that. Or if you want it to be a little bit more in the background, a little bit more mellow. You can do that as well. You have the chorus pedal, which if you want to get really crazy with, you can turn the mix all the way up. So it's really washed out, or you can be a little bit more conservative and dial it back a little bit. You can adjust the rate, the depth, and the feedback of the chorus as well, which is really handy. So for example, if you want it to be really quick trails in the chorus, or if you want it to be a little bit slower, and just see how much you can do with the feedback, and then just dial in the depth knob to your liking. So now going on to the amp page, as you can see, there's three different types of amps when using the Archetype GOJIRA. There's the high gain one, which is the one we've been using. Then there's like a really dry, almost crunchy type of one, and then there's a stellar clean one as well. As you can see, this little link icon here means that each amp is linked to their respective cab, but if you want a little bit more versatility, you can click that, and now you can use any different cab with any different amp. So if we quickly go to the cab page over here, as you can see, I'm still using the clean head, although I can use that kind of like midsy, bluesy cab, and then I can use the really high gain cab as well. And that's vice versa across all the different amps, as you can see here. Each separate amp has their own equalizer section. So for example, if I'm on the high gain amp and I want a little bit of 2K, if I go on the mids amp, it's not going to affect that at all. It will only affect the high gain amp, which is really cool. Going back to the cab section, as you can see, if you've used any other Neuro DSP plugin before, it is very similar in the sense that you get a bunch of different microphones you can choose from. In this case, you get a dynamic 57, a dynamic 421, condenser 414, condenser 184, ribbon 160, and ribbon 121. So there's lots of different mics you can choose from, and it just gives you heaps of versatility across all the plugin, across all the different cabs and all the different amps. You can either just use the one mic or even load up a custom IR of a cabinet impulse you really enjoy, or you can activate a second mic and blend the two together. This is the way it sounds when the plugin loads up. Or Or you can use another mic and kind of blend it in a little bit. As you can see, the level of the second mic has dipped down a little bit, just so it doesn't overpower the 57. However, if you wanted to turn it up just a little bit so it blends in a little more. Or you can just change mics to something like a ribbon 121 to get a little bit more boominess out of the cab. Or you can just grab the mic and kind of just move it around to wherever you like. As you can see, the position and distance sliders here are going crazy because I am moving it around. You can set the distance from how far the mic is away from the cab, or you can just set like the position, so left to right, how close you want it to the cone and stuff like that. But I feel like when you load up the plugin, the values that it has it set at by default, that's the really good starting value, and you shouldn't really have to change it much from there. And then last but not least, the last page of the plugin, which is the effects page. So you have a delay and a reverb. And if you've used Archetype Corey Wong by Newer DSP, you'll notice that this also has a shimmer option for the reverb, which is really, really cool, especially for clean guitars. Delay pedal, nothing too out of the ordinary. You get your ping pong, you get your modulation setting with the tape saturation. You can obviously set how much delay you want and the feedback trails and stuff like that. The tone of each delay repeat, the time, you can lock it in with your DAW, so it's all in time with the tempo and stuff. Really, really cool. I use these in the lead tone, which I'll showcase in a little bit. So now going on to the tone that I made, as you can see there are a couple revisions here, but this is the final one that I ended up on, Chunk 3. So as you can tell, very, very high gain and much more crispier than the default setting, which is what I like anyway. So first page, nothing's engaged. If I do want to play around with the drop setting, like I was saying before, I will turn this on and kind of play around with it. That's very, very low. The reason why I keep going on about this little trick that you can do with the Octave pedal is that, at least in my experience anyway, it's been very, very hard to find a plugin that will actually drop tune your guitar in real time and not get weird artifacts when you do chords and stuff like that. This holds up very, very well. It's very transparent, and honestly, I've already sent an email to Newer and they said they might think about it, but please make this a standalone plugin that's a drop tune pedal, because that would honestly be one of my most used plugins ever, and I feel like a lot of people could really benefit from something like that. Going on to the Stomp page now, as you can see, I have the overdrive engaged, distortion's all the way off because it's already distorted enough, level pretty high, and then tone, like I was saying before, I have it around halfway for this particular overdrive pedal. I usually have it somewhere around here, but I feel like that's a little bit too bitey, at least in this case anyway, so I had it around there. Maybe if you had a really low tuned guitar, it'd probably benefit from turning the tone up just a little bit, but I feel like for this particular guitar, with this set of pickups, the tone knob can stick around right here. So now going to the amp page, as you can see, I'm using the high gain amp with that high gain cab, and what I'm doing is I'm turning the gain down just a little bit just to save the tone a little bit, otherwise I feel like it would get too washy. I'm compensating a little bit by turning the lows up. I feel like when you turn the overdrive on in this particular plugin, it does suck out some of the lows, so just kind of bringing that back to life a little bit, scooping just a touch of mids out, pushing the highs ever so slightly so it gets a little bit brighter. Master all the way down just so you get a little bit less of that power amp saturation. Presence just a little bit up, same with depth just to get a little bit more chunk out of it, and then level I haven't touched. Going on to the cab section, I have changed it around a little bit, so I've kind of pushed the dynamic 57 just a little bit more away from the center of the speaker, just so you get a little bit less of those like really high pitched harsh frequencies. And I have moved the dynamic 421 just up really close to the cab, but I'm kind of leveling it out just less than the 57, so it's just acting as like a blend tool. No effects on, obviously, because it's a high gain patch, no reverb, no lead, nothing like that. It's just straight chugs. Moving on to the next preset, I've called this the crazy lead because, as you can see, I have the octave pedal engaged, I have the overdrive, the phaser, and the chorus engaged, and I'm using the high gain amp with very high gain settings, so it's really washed out, really crazy. It's the lead that you heard in the beginning song. So this is really cool because it's a really cool layering effect. For example, if you had a riff that was super chunky and you just wanted to have something in the background that was ever so subtle, just to kind of meld everything together, you could use something like this. It's very gainy, takes up the whole frequency spectrum and kind of just melds everything together, and it's really cool. So now I'm going to be switching guitars from my Jackson to my custom Fender Telecaster, which I'll get into in a little bit. So here we have my custom Fender Telecaster that's fitted with a Warmoth neck, and it's an official Fender parts body, and it has bare knuckle pile driver pickups as well. Going on to the next preset, which I just called lead tone because it's my typical type of lead tone that I like to use in all my songs. So again, overdrive engaged just for that little bit of push. I have turned the tone knob a little bit higher than I usually would for the rhythm tone, just so you get a little bit more push out of the actual tone, so it's heard in the mix, cuts through a little bit more. Again, the high gain amp is being used, but I am dialing the gain up just a little bit, just so it kind of grabs onto the notes a little bit more, as opposed to when you're doing it really heavy rhythm playing with really heavy picking, you don't need all that gain because you're doing it yourself. No equalizer settings engaged, but with the cab I have used a ribbon 121 just so it fattens up everything just a little bit. It kind of grabs the notes instead of using maybe like a condenser 414 or something. I just want to have a little bit of that low end thump when I'm playing leads. And then with the cab section, the only thing that I've really changed is maybe put the dynamic 57 closer to the actual center of the cab, just so you get that like top end sizzle, and then I'm leveling that out with a ribbon 121, so it's getting a little bit beefy every time I pick and stuff like that. And then with the lead tone, you obviously have the delay and reverb engaged. Very conservative settings. It's not super wet or super washed out or anything like that. Shimmers off. Like, I want whatever I'm playing to be on top of the tone, and just the reverb and the delay repeats to accompany it. So this is what it sounds like with the Telecaster. And then the last preset that I made is this math rock preset using the second amp with the third cab. I really like the way the third cab sounded, so I kept using it, but I am using the second amp just to kind of get a little bit less gain, a little bit more crunchier, dialing the gain back a little bit just to get a little bit of grit out of the notes and not be super clean like if we were to use this amp. I just want a little bit of grit. Perfect. And just to go through the effects, no octave effects. We're using a touch of chorus. It's very minimal, but when you do chords and stuff, you can hear it. With the amp, lows stay in the middle, dip mids back a little bit, push highs up, master just a little bit higher, presence just to get a little bit more like that top end lift out of the amp, depth just a little bit down so it doesn't get too flubby, and then I've kind of dialed leveled up just a little bit so it compensates for the amount that I've taken out. Gain, dial back a little bit back, just like I said before. No equalizer settings on. The cabinet setting is stock standard. I haven't changed it at all. And with the effects, I have a touch of delay going on, as you can see, very minimal, and a touch of reverb. So it kind of sounds nice and spacey like this on the middle pickup. So as you can probably tell, the plugin is super versatile. You can go from anywhere from like super high gain metal to something as mellow as math rock, and you can even get a really nice clean turn out of it, which I'm going to do right now on the fly. So picking the first amp, I might just pick the first cab with it just so it sounds nice and chimey. So as you can tell, there's no grit whatsoever. It's super clean, which is really cool. And the controls are very minimal. So you get a bright switch, gain knob, bass, mids, treble, and level. That's it. Sounding super clean right now. I'd like a little bit more reverb out of it, so I'm going to turn it up just a touch. Maybe turn delay up just a little bit. Unsync that. Give the shimmer a go, maybe cut some lows out of the reverb and let some more highs in so it's really nice and chimey. Maybe just to get a little bit more chime out of the cleans, I'll turn treble up a little bit, maybe dip some mids. I'll leave the bass rotors for now, maybe turn gain up just a touch. Okay, it's getting that weird like single coil sound. Maybe if I turn the bright switch off. Kind of getting rid of some of it. So in summary, it's basically just a really nice, well thought out plugin from Neural DSP. Yet again, you do get a bunch of different sounds that you can get out of it, whether it's high gain or like bluesy crunchy, or just really nice cleans with really nice shimmer reverb and stuff like that. It's not really overtaking anything in the Neural DSP line. It's kind of just adding to their already really nice collection of plugins. You get a bunch of different effects in this one that aren't really stock standard in other high gain Neural DSP plugins, such as like the phaser and the chorus, and even like a distortion and an overdrive. I don't think you can actually get that in another high gain Neural DSP plugin, if I'm not mistaken. You even get the Octave as well that you can set with a foot switch, all MIDI compatible, so many different options. It's just another knock out of the park from Neural DSP. And that is that. So thank you Neural DSP for sending this plugin over. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be using this for a lot of different effect stuff as well, and I will be using the Octave pedal to drop tune my guitars for sure. As always, if you guys like this video at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you saw or heard. And if you want to see more of this stuff, definitely think about subscribing. If you guys want to support me directly and buy tabs, stems, DIs, and all that good stuff, the demo songs just like the one you heard in the beginning of the video, definitely think about subscribing to my Patreon as well. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Ciao.